Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. In Spain, 605 people have died from the new coronavirus in the past 24 hours, taking the death toll to nearly 16,000. The death toll in the US has surpassed 16,000, while the number of fatalities in Iran has risen to over 4,000. In Pakistan, there are over 4,600 coronavirus cases, with 66 deaths and 727 recoveries. Worldwide, the number of infections has exceeded 1.6 million, with over 96,000 deaths. More in this report.
In a slight relief, the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has come out of intensive care after his condition improved. Governments have called for continuing sharp vigilance as lockdowns start to work to flatten the arc of the infections. US top infectious disease expert Anthony Fauci says it is important that people continue to stay home. He says there has been decrease in the number of hospitalizations in the country.
At the same time as we're seeing the increase in deaths, we're seeing rather dramatic decrease in the need for hospitalizations. Like, I think yesterday was something like 200 new hospitalizations, and it's been as high as 1,400 at any given time. So that is going in the right direction. I say that, and I always remind myself when I say that, that means that what we are doing is working, and therefore we need to continue to do it.
Scientists across the world are desperately looking and working to find a cure for the disease. In the US, the doctors are trying a treatment first used in the 1890s that relies on blood plasma donated by recovered patients. Scientists say people who survive an infection disease like the COVID-19 are left with blood-containing antibodies to fight off a virus. Convalescent plasma treatment was also successfully used during the 1918 flu pandemic. The blood component that carries the antibodies can be collected and given to newly infected patients to treat them.
People who recover have in their blood antibodies that kill the virus. And if they donate the plasma is the liquid part of the blood, not the one with all the red cells and all that. That plasma contains antibodies, and you can take that plasma and give it to another person to treat the infection or to prevent infection.
Meanwhile, in China, health officials have reported 42 new COVID-19 cases, of which 38 are imported.
In Pakistan, the National Command and Operations Center held a daily meeting in Islamabad to discuss the developments related to coronavirus pandemic. Chairing the session, Federal Minister for Planning and Development, Asad Umar, stressed the need to synergize all efforts through one window operation. The meeting also discussed steps for the return of the stranded Pakistanis abroad. He said those who want to return will have to undergo a thorough screening process and necessary quarantine. It also decided the trade of essential goods with Afghanistan and Iran will continue under health guidelines. There are over 4,600 confirmed cases in Pakistan, with 66 deaths and 727 recoveries. Moving on, Saudi Arabia is hosting a virtual meeting of energy ministers from the group of 20 major economies in a bid to ensure market stability amid COVID-19. The meeting comes after OPEC producers and allies agreed to cut oil output by over a fifth to help prop up prices and counter the slump in demand. Last month, the G20 announced a $5 trillion package to help fight the pandemic. International Energy Agency has been pushing for G20 to be a venue for expanded oil talks. IEA Executive Director Fatih Birol has said continued crash in oil prices can spark an economic calamity if unchecked. The EU finance ministers have agreed on a rescue package of about $547 billion for European countries hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic. Eurogroup's chairman, Mario Centeno, announced the deal reached after MEPFON discussions. In Brussels. This report has details.
The package agreed is less than $1.5 trillion European Central Bank had agreed on. Centeno said over $109 billion will be allocated to subsidize wages to retain jobs. The package also includes European Investment Bank instrument intended to supply about $219 billion of liquidity to companies. The ECB will also set credit lines over $262 billion.
We would strive to make this pandemic crisis support operational within 2 weeks. Those were the three new European Union safety nets I wanted to talk about today. They add up to around €500 billion, a step change in the economic coordination within our union.
The funds will be used from European Stability Mechanism to backstop states as they go on a spending spree to help economies back on their feet. The package will bring EU's top fiscal response to the epidemic to about $3.5 trillion.
US-based watchdog, the Human Rights Watch, has called on India to repeal its controversial Citizenship Amendment Act. In a report, the body said Indian government's discriminatory laws and policies have spurred violence against Muslims. It said the act can threaten the citizenship rights of millions of Indian Muslims. The body said police failed to intervene when the government supporters attacked the protesters. It said law enforcement agencies have been quick to arrest those who staged peaceful protests against the government. The watchdog said India's ruling Bharatiya Janata Party's policies have created discriminations on the basis of religion. The controversial citizenship law sparked outrage among the religious minorities, which led to violent protests. Over 50 people were killed in Delhi during the clashes in March. India faces an uphill battle to contain the COVID-19 outbreak in Mumbai's slums. Dense and unsanitary passages make it next to impossible to enforce a full lockdown. India has reported nearly 7,000 infection cases and 227 deaths. The western state of Maharashtra has emerged as a hotspot with over 1,100 cases. Mumbai's seaside slum Voli Kolivada reported 184 cases, 133 up from the previous day. In one of Asia's largest slums of Dharavi, 12 had tested positive as of Wednesday, 8 up from the previous day. The local government says it has been able to quarantine more than 24,000 people, but officials acknowledge they face a daunting task in the slums. In Indian-occupied Kashmir, the chemist shops and pharmacies are facing acute shortage of life-saving medicines due to continued lockdown by India. The valley has been under India's curfew and communications blackout for the last 250 days. The supply of the medicines to the occupied valley was badly hit after Modi-led government repealed the special status of the territory. The occupation authorities further tightened the siege on March 18. When the first case of coronavirus was reported in the valley. Kashmiri media says people have been denied basic commodities after the stringent clampdown. Pakistan has pledged $3 million for the SARC emergency fund to support regional efforts against the coronavirus pandemic. In a statement, the Foreign Office said the fund will be utilized through consultations with the member states as per the SARC Charter. It said Pakistan considers SARC as an important platform for regional cooperation. The office said Islamabad remains committed to the SARC process and will continue working with the member states to strengthen regional cooperation. In Afghanistan, five employees of the state-owned central bank have been killed in western province of Herat. A police spokesperson said the employees were kidnapped while on their way from Kushan district in Herat to the center of the province. He said the employees did not coordinate their movement with security agencies. The Ministry of Interior Affairs spokesperson Tariq Aryan said the Taliban were responsible for the incident. The Taliban have not commented on the allegation yet. Chad's army says it has killed 1,000 Boko Haram fighters during an operation against the armed group in the Lake Chad border region. The army said 52 troops also died during the operation launched on March the 31st. The army spokesperson said 50 motorized canoes of Boko Haram were also destroyed. He said the operation was launched after nearly 100 soldiers were killed in a Boko Haram attack last month. Chad's army said it has forced the fighters out of the country, completing the operation. Lake Chad is a vast marshy body of water where the borders of Niger, Nigeria, Chad and Cameroon meet. The western shores of the lake have been hit by armed fighters since Boko Haram launched a campaign of violence in 2009. The International Organization for Migration says it has rescued more than 200 illegal immigrants off the Libyan coast. In a tweet, the body said migrants were returned to Libya. The organization said the rescued migrants are still on the Libyan Coast Guard's vessel and have not yet disembarked due to fighting in the area. It said a safe disembarkation mechanism is needed for protection of the migrants. Libya has become a preferred departure point for migrants hoping to cross the Mediterranean Sea into Europe. IOM said there are currently 650,000 illegal immigrants in Libya, many of whom lack medical care and basic needs. The European Union says it is ready to impose stricter sanctions on high-level Syrian regime officials. This follows a chemical arms watchdog's report accusing Damascus of dropping poisonous chlorine and sarin nerve gas on Hama in 2017. EU's foreign policy chief, Josep Borrell, strongly condemned the use of chemical weapons by the Syrian regime. Borrell said that those identified as the perpetrators of these horrible attacks need to be held accountable. Earlier, Turkish Foreign Ministry said the Syrian regime killed its own citizens for 9 years and must be held accountable. In a statement, the ministry said it is the prerogative of the UN and the international community to take necessary action. The European Union has pledged an assistance package of over $77 million for Palestine to respond to the coronavirus pandemic. This bloc's representatives, Sven Kohn von Bergstorf, made the announcement during a meeting with Palestine's Prime Minister Mohammed Shattai. The EU welcomed the preventive measures taken by the Palestinian Authority as well as the COVID-19 response plan. Bergstorf said the bloc notes challenges occupied Palestinian territory faces as it is economically dependent on Israel. He said the EU recognizes that Palestinians, like Europeans and many others, are severely affected. Bergstorf said the aid announcement is a message from the EU that Palestine does not stand alone in the fight against the pandemic. Under the foreign policy instrument, the EU will also provide a new allocation of €4 million for refugee support in both the West Bank and Gaza. More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Hungary has prolonged a nationwide lockdown indefinitely to slow the spread of the coronavirus. In a video message on social media post, Prime Minister Viktor Orban urged citizens to stay home despite the Easter holidays. He said the government will review the need to maintain the lockdown each week. Orban said that municipal governments will be allowed to impose special restrictions that ensure local communities are protected. Hungary has officially recorded nearly 1,000 coronavirus cases and 66 deaths. Budapest acknowledges the number of actual cases is probably much higher. The country introduced stay-at-home orders last month. Taiwan has slammed accusations from the WHO's chief that it passed racist remarks against him. Speaking in Taipei, a foreign ministry spokesperson said WHO's accusations against Taiwan do not represent reality. She said the WHO chief should apologize to the country. The spokesperson said Taiwan does not encourage its citizens to pass racist remarks. On Wednesday, WHO Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus rejected racist slurs against him, which he said had originated in Taiwan. Taiwan has taken effective measures against the coronavirus, logging just 379 cases and 5 deaths to date. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has called for unity among Security Council members in the face of the global coronavirus crisis. Speaking at the UNSC's first meeting on COVID-19, Guterres said the Council's engagement is critical to mitigating the peace and security implications of the pandemic. The UN chief said a signal of unity and resolve from the Council will count for a lot at this anxious time. He said the virus is potentially leading to an increase rise in social unrest and violence around the globe. Guterres said the crisis has hindered international, regional, and national conflict resolution efforts exactly when they are needed the most. Meanwhile, U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Kelly Craft, said the most effective way to contain the pandemic is accurate, science-based data collection and analysis. Russia's UN envoy, Vasily Nebenzia, said countries need to put aside their differences and suspicions in order to defeat coronavirus. The International Atomic Energy Agency says a third of almost 30 countries around the world considering to adopt nuclear power are in Africa. As the continent faces power shortfalls and drought threats to hydropower, a growing range of African nations are considering a shift to nuclear energy. The IAEA said Ghana, Kenya, Egypt, Morocco, and Sudan have already engaged with the agency to assess their readiness to embark on a nuclear program. It said Algeria, Tunisia, Uganda, and Zambia are mulling the possibility. World Nuclear Association says at least 7 sub-Saharan African states have signed agreements to deploy nuclear power with backing from Russia. Christians around the world are marking Good Friday under lockdowns as mass congregations are cancelled amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Normally, tens of thousands of people attend the event, with Pope Francis leading Roman Catholics for the traditional Via Crucis around the Roman amphitheater. This report has more details.
This year, streets around the Colosseum will be empty, and even Pope Francis will not turn up for the religious ceremony. Pope Francis will preside over the event in a small atrium of St. Peter's Basilica at the Vatican, instead of mass candlelight processions.
We are celebrating the Good Friday, the commemoration of death to Jesus, in very difficult circumstances where death is talking a lot all over the world, also in our country here. And so it's important in a way in this place where this happened that we can pray this, commemorate this, and also to be united in the heart and the prayer for all those who are suffering and dying.
In Jerusalem, the Vatican's apostolic administrator in the Holy Land called for prayer for people suffering and dying from the coronavirus.
U.S. Federal Reserve has announced over $2 trillion financial stimulus measure to support the economy hard hit by COVID-19. The Fed said it aims to assist households, businesses, and local governments. The Fed said it will offer up to $500 billion in loans to states and municipalities through the purchase of municipal bonds. Federal Reserve's Chairman Jerome Powell said they will continue to use emergency lending powers until ensuring a recovery path. He said in the current situation, many borrowers will benefit from these programs, but the entities in need of direct fiscal support will be left out. Meanwhile, the Department of Labor said in last 3 weeks, over 16 million people have made unemployment claims. Asian stock markets have ended mixed, supported by an overnight rise on Wall Street. Investors' concerns mount as they speculate on deep recession due to coronavirus outbreak. Seoul's Kospi gained over 1%, Nikkei 225 closed over 0.75% higher, Shanghai Composite lost ground. Trading is suspended in European stock markets amid Good Friday holiday. And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.